I'd never planned on being out there that late. It was supposed to be a short drive, a few pictures of the fall leaves, and then back home before dark. But you know how it goes when the road just keeps pulling you deeper. It was early October, that time when the northern air starts to smell like smoke and cold water. I'd always loved that smell. It reminded me of the small-town autumns of my childhood. So when I saw a side road cutting through a stretch of pines, I took it. No GPS, no service, just instinct and a half-tank of gas. At first, it felt perfect. Empty road. Golden leaves flickering like fire as the sun hit them. And the kind of silence that feels alive, like the woods themselves are listening. I drove for maybe 20 minutes until I saw it. A clearing. A small lake, still as glass, with a few abandoned picnic tables by the waterline. There wasn't another soul around. No cars, no cabins, nothing. Just the kind of peaceful isolation you only ever get in the far north. I told myself I'd stop for 10 minutes. Stretch my legs. Maybe take a few photos. But the air felt so clean, and the view so unreal, that I just stayed. Before I knew it, the sun was already sinking, painting the sky orange and purple. That's when I decided I'd spend the night. I had my sleeping bag in the back seat, a lighter, a half-empty bag of chips. Wasn't the first time I'd camped without planning to. I parked by the tree-line, built a small fire, and set up near the water's edge. The first hour was nothing but calm. The crackle of the fire, the faint lap of the water, and the quiet rhythm of the woods. But once darkness set in, I realized something strange. There weren't any forest sounds. No crickets. No owls. No wind. Just stillness. It wasn't the kind of silence that makes you relaxed. It was the kind that presses on your ears until you start to hear your own heartbeat. I told myself it was fine. Animals get quiet when the temperature drops. Still, I kept the fire going longer than usual. Around midnight, I was sitting by the water, half dazed from the flames, when I heard it, a splash. Not a big one. Just enough to snap my focus. I looked out at the lake, but the surface was flat again. Maybe a fish. Maybe nothing. Still, my skin was crawling. I stood up, scanned the shoreline, and that's when I noticed it. Something moved on the opposite side of the lake. A shadow. Human-shaped. Standing between the trees. The firelight didn't reach that far, but the shape was clear enough. Someone was there. Watching. I froze. The figure didn't move. Didn't walk closer. Didn't make a sound. I kept staring until my eyes burned, but when I blinked, it was gone. Just vanished into the blackness. I stood there for a while, trying to convince myself it was my imagination. Then I saw the reflection, ripples, moving slowly toward my side of the lake. That was it. I grabbed my flashlight and swept it over the water. Nothing. Just the shimmer of light on the surface. But the ripples, they didn't stop. They kept moving, slow and steady, like someone was walking through the water beneath the surface, straight toward me. I backed away, heart pounding. My brain was scrambling for an explanation. Fish, wind, anything. But every step I took back, the ripples came closer. Then they stopped. The lake went flat again. Not a sound. Not a single wave. I stood there for maybe 5 more seconds, and that's when I heard the voice. It came from across the lake. Soft. Calm. But it said my name. I froze. There was no one who should have known my name out here. No friends. No service. Nobody even knew where I was. The voice called again. This time, slower. Hey. Come over here. My stomach dropped. It wasn't a shout, it was quiet, conversational, like someone standing right beside me. Except it came from across the water. I didn't answer. Didn't move. I just kept the flashlight aimed at the trees. Then it called again. My name. Longer this time. Drawn out. Like whoever it was wanted me to follow it into the woods. I stumbled back toward the fire. The voice didn't stop. It just kept repeating my name, softer each time, until I couldn't tell if I was hearing it in the air or inside my own head. Finally, I shouted, "Who's out there?" Silence. Then, from behind me, "Why'd you come back?" I whipped around. No one. Just the firelight flickering against the trees. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the fire until the sky turned pale gray, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. By morning, the voice was gone. The lake looked normal again. Almost too normal, like nothing had ever happened. But when I walked back to my car, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Boot prints. All around my campsite. Leading from the woods to my tent. Then back out again. There was only one set, large, heavy, like hiking boots. Not mine. Whoever had been there last night wasn't part of my imagination. They'd been standing over me while I slept. I got into my car and sat there for a long time, trying to figure out what to do. Part of me wanted to call the cops, but what would I even say? Someone said my name across a lake. I decided to just leave. Drive home. Forget it happened. But about 30 minutes into the drive, I saw something that made me stop breathing. In the rearview mirror, on the side of the road, someone was standing there. A man. Facing my direction. Same build as the shadow I'd seen by the lake. He didn't move. Didn't wave. Just stood there, watching my car fade down the road. I drove the rest of the way home without looking back again. That should have been the end of it. But 2 weeks later, I got a letter. No return address. No postage stamp. Just sitting on my doorstep like someone had dropped it off in the middle of the night. Inside was a single sheet of paper. On it, in shaky handwriting, were 6 words. "You left something at the lake." That was it. No signature. No explanation. My first thought was that someone was playing a prank. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized something terrifying. I hadn't told anyone about that night. No social media post. No message. Nothing. I hadn't even told my brother, who I usually shared everything with. So whoever wrote that letter, they had been there. Maybe they'd watched me leave. Maybe they'd followed me home. For the next few nights, I barely slept. I started keeping my lights on. Locked my doors twice. Nothing happened, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched again. Every sound outside felt like footsteps. Every creak in the walls sounded like breathing. A week later, it happened again. Another letter. This time, just one word. Soon. I didn't even open it right away. I just stared at it, sitting on my counter, until it felt like the room was closing in on me. That was when I decided I had to go back. I had to see that lake one more time. Find out who was doing this. End it. It was probably the worst decision I've ever made. I waited until morning, packed a few things, and started driving north again. Every mile closer, that same uneasiness crept back in. Like my body already knew what my mind refused to accept. By the time I reached the turnoff road, fog had rolled in over the trees. Thick, heavy fog that seemed to swallow the world whole. I parked in the same spot as before. The lake looked different in the daylight. Smaller, quieter, somehow emptier. But the air still carried that same tension. Like it was holding its breath. I walked down to where my fire pit had been, and sure enough, the ashes were gone. Like someone had cleaned up after me. But the prints were back. Fresh ones. Leading from the woods to the water.